Welcome to episode 118 of Destination Linux. This is a podcast of opinions made up of four of the greatest minds ever discussing our passion for Linux. I'm Zeb, and with me today are my two Goliath podcasting friends. Michael, how have you been?
I've been doing great, thank you.
Good. And Ryan, how are things with you?
Tickety-boo, tickety-boo.
And that came up perfectly with the Zeb in the background there. That was awesome. Perfect timing.
Love it.
So, Michael, how has your week been?
It's been a little bit interesting. I actually did a couple more podcasting things. Like last week, I did like 7 podcasts in 7 days. This time, I've done 4. And I'll have a link in the show notes for the one of them. But I did a live stream with Gabmus from Tech Pills.
That was awesome.
Yeah, that was fun. We talked about like the best distros for different scenarios and different use cases and that kind of thing. And it was a really fun conversation. We also had like a little post show thing, and I don't know if he's going to put it in the show, but he sent me a clip where he cut out a piece of the post show where I was talking about like the different types of bananas and stuff. It was like, I was like, well, yeah, that did happen, didn't it?
Sounds fun. So, Ryan, what trouble did you start this week?
Well, I got in all kinds of trouble because my FreeNAS server has been all set up finally, and that is thanks to, I got it to a certain point, everything was installed, but I started running into some trouble. Dustin from the Budgie team, who's an expert in like all things servers, was asking me a question about a project we were working on actually separate from this, and I was like, I can't concentrate on your project because I can't get my storage solution to work right. So he's like, all right, pull it up. And we worked through it. And it was, of course, a simple thing that I hadn't checked. But it's awesome. I'm absolutely loving the FreeNAS server right now. And I have VMs rolling in it right now. I have Debian and an Ubuntu VM just for fun out there, and just keep learning a lot of new stuff with utilizing that and Linux at the same time. Also, and perhaps more importantly, we had an amazing gaming session with Chris Ware, Noah, Alan Pope, and Michael, along with other folks in the community. We were able to get games in like Golf with Friends and Team Fortress 2. And the funniest part is, to me, watching Noah play, if you go watch it on my video, Noah couldn't join us for TF2, but he played Golf with Friends, was like watching my kids play a game for the first time. Like when he would do something and it worked, he would scream out loud, like, I did it, look at me. It was just so infectious and fun to see him because he doesn't play games. This is kind of his first adventure into it. So it was really cool to be able to play with all of those awesome people. And we had a really good time. So hopefully we can do it again.
Absolutely. It was great.
Excellent. So as you can see, we're missing Noah this week. So as is tradition, please leave in the comments and let us know what your best guess is why Noah isn't here. Now, there will be bonus points if you don't repeat what you said last time. So get your thinking caps on and let us know what's going on.
So, Zeb, before we go on, because you were gone for 2 weeks and people were leaving in comments like, good show, but where's Zeb? We miss Zeb. Zeb better be coming back. So clearly there's a lot of fandom for you. So what were you up to in your adventures?
Well, the first week I was away, it was just a family issue that I had to deal with, and there was nothing I could do about it. So I had to cancel on you guys last minute. But last week I was actually on a 4-day break with the family down the southeast coast of England, sleeping in one of my pet hates, a very large 8-berth caravan. So that was all good fun, but I would be sitting there twitching in the middle of the night, wondering when the truck was going to come and knock us over from the side. Nice. So that was a good time. But then, unfortunately, as we were leaving and I was going to pack up the car, walking out with the suitcase and a black sack, and I did the royal tumble out of the caravan, saw I was going to land on my head, so tried to do a tumble, which didn't quite work out. It was just like this big splurge on the floor. And I was laying up looking at the seagulls going, what are you laughing at? That hurt.
Oh, I love it.
And then whilst the family were concerned, within about 30 seconds, there was just 4 people at the caravan door laughing their heads off. And I was laying on the floor in agony. Typical family. So thanks very much for that, kids. So yeah, that's what I've been up to for the last
The
2
only
weeks.
problem with the story is, where was Linux during this whole time? I mean, did you have a Linux caravan? Did you carry a Linux laptop? Did you join a Linux conference? I mean,
It was Linux free. In fact, it was almost technology free. I only had my mobile phone with me, so it was fantastic.
wow, it's like time traveling to the Middle Ages. That sounds
Right.
horrible.
Yeah, it wasn't good because the supposed camp Wi-Fi was about as much use as a piece of wet string.
Well, very good. Well, just a reminder to the community that the page for self and booking for the Southeast Linux Fest is live right now, and you can join, thanks to you, the entire DL crew, June 14th through 16th, for all kinds of Linux goodness there. And we will have Zeb here in America, and it's going to be an absolute blast. You do not want to miss it, so go get your reservations now. If you can't join us, however, we will be doing some live streams and podcasting from the event, so you can join us that way there.
Absolutely. It's going to be awesome. And tickety-boo. So the email this week is coming from Matt. He says, hey guys, new to the show and loving it. This has replaced the Ask Noah show, This Week in Linux, and any need to watch Ryan's YouTube channel.
What?
Huh?
That's ridiculous.
He says, I have some comments about episode 116, and I think you should hear them. You're all a bunch of gooey noobs, especially Ryan. You
Fight
want
me,
tiling
real life.
terminals, use Tmux. It's the only one with actual geek cred.
Whatever.
He says, I wear hearing aids and didn't have them in at the end of the show. Michael, I have a good doctor for the uncontrollable body sounds that if you're interested. There was no body sounds. Noah just hears things. Anyway, everything at the top of this was a joke, if you're not aware. I never actually listened to This Week in Linux. That's a good one.
Write this.
He says, and number 4, Zeb, you are a hero.
Do you notice that nobody trolls Zeb? It's
Right, exactly.
always
What is that?
everybody else.
What is that?
Like, we get completely butchered here, and then he's like, but Zeb, you're a hero. I mean, the whole point was to troll, but you leave Zeb out of it. Rude.
Of course.
Of course.
Of course. And he says, P.S. number 3 is also a lie. I listen to This Week in Linux every week. I'm too Canadian to pretend to be mean. This is awesome. So thank you very much for the email, Matt. And if you want to send an email, we appreciate it anytime. It's like, what are kind of comments you want? If you want to troll Ryan, it's also great.
No, Michael. It's way more fun to troll Michael, trust me.
Yeah, exactly.
So now you've seen why we want to hear from you, our listeners. So send in your favorite Linux software or tips and tricks for the week. We love to hear and know what tools that make your Linux experience amazing. So send your emails to comments@destinationlinux.org.
So up first in the show this week, we have some huge news. There's actually quite a lot of news this week. And the biggest thing is absolutely the Ubuntu news for the 1904 release. So that it's finally here. The Disco Dingo has arrived. And the latest version of Ubuntu comes with a lot of updates. These also most of these apply to the Linux kernel 5.0, Mesa 19 is available in Ubuntu and also all the flavors. But the official Ubuntu version has GNOME 3.32. It has some new improvements to Nautilus and an upgraded icon theme. And there's actually quite some cool things that are being added for this one with experimental fractional scaling support for Wayland and even some Xorg support for fractional scaling, which is really nice because they've been working on fractional scaling in GNOME for a very long time. Specifically, Ubuntu has been working on that. So that is nice to see that they've accomplished that because if you have a high dpi display, you might want a 1440p display, but if you have a high dpi display, it's great that they are now making it possible to easily do it. Like even Windows is still not very good for high dpi. So there's also a lot of other things like the hardware enablement stack and the enhancements to the kernel is great because there's improvements for people who have like newer versions of AMD, newer versions of the other hardware like NVIDIA, if for some reason you want to use an NVIDIA. But what's really cool about this, all seriousness, there is a good thing that happened in this latest release in that the third-party software install option in the Ubiquity installer. If you choose that now, it will automatically install NVIDIA based on whatever your NVIDIA GPU is, rather than you having to install it and then go after the fact and get the NVIDIA drivers with like the restricted extras and stuff like that. So this is really cool that they're doing this, because it makes it a lot easier for new users to install these drivers, because in the past it wasn't very hard, but not knowing that you have to do it can be an issue.
Right. Yeah, I think when I thought back to my journey in Linux, and at that point I was on NVIDIA because I didn't know any better, and I was utilizing the Ubuntu's to get my graphics driver. But I remember struggling with, when I first booted into Ubuntu, figuring out where the drivers were and stuff. And once I figured it out, I was like, oh, that's super simple. But when you click that add additional drivers check mark when you're installing the third party, and it not only adds adds an NVIDIA driver, it goes through and determines the best NVIDIA driver to install for your particular card. So if you have an older model, it will install the appropriate driver if it's available. And if you have, because some of the NVIDIA drivers, NVIDIA has deprecated some of the cards, basically, they don't provide driver support anymore. So if it's still supported, it will do that. I think that's a huge improvement for brand new people coming to Linux. And finally, with kernel 5.0, it's a major improvement in hardware compatibility, especially on the AMD side, along with other manufacturers as well who've released into the kernel stack since, 4.19 or 2.0 they were on?
4.20, I think, is the one that had like the Radeon 7 and stuff.
So yeah, it's a big improvement, and finally individuals can take advantage with that without having to utilize something like UKUU instead. But also all the other flavors got some nice improvements there. You've got Ubuntu with the Calamaris full disk encryption updated to LXQT 0.14.1. And I have to, because Dustin helped me out with my server, mention Ubuntu Budgie. Ubuntu Budgie has the latest version of Budgie, of course. They switched to Nemo so they could keep desktop icons. They added extra features, new system themes, and the Catfish search tool, which I've used before. I like that one a lot. Yeah. What do you think, Zeb? What are your thoughts on 1904?
Well, I think 1904 is going to be a good ground base for moving on to 2004 next year. I'll also give a shout out to Ubuntu Budgie. It's, for me, comes very, very close to being the best looking Ubuntu this time round. I love the dark theme. I love everything they've done with it. It almost makes me want to use Budgie full time. It's that good. I'll give one little caveat to the NVIDIA side of things. If you're a gamer, don't tick that box, because otherwise you'll only get the 390 drivers. So they're doing really well with the kernel 5, but can we have some better, newer drivers out of the box than 390? Because, they're missing 396, 410, 415, and the latest is 418. So surely they can give us 410 or 415. I don't know what the complications are, but if you are a gamer and you want the best drivers, make sure you don't tick that box. Otherwise, you'll have 390 contend with. You'll have to uninstall that, put the PPA in, and then put 418 in. There's also another minor hiccup, and I think they're in the process of trying to fix it. If you mess with your NVIDIA settings, there's no way of clicking Save Configuration at the end. It just refuses to write wherever you decide. You can't even write it to your home directory and move it after the fact. So I'm not quite sure what's gone wrong there, whether it's an NVIDIA thing or something that slipped through the net, but hopefully they'll get that fixed pretty soon. But other than that, I think it's a solid release. Oh, and the one advocate as well that we forgot to mention, if you're into OBS, there is no NVENC anymore. So if you want to use OBS and in NVIDIA, you're going to have to go with the Snap.
Wow. That's a lot of changes there.
I mean, you might be able to compile NVENC yourself, right, with FFmpeg?
If you're clever enough, but every script that I'd seen that people had put out there already, for me, didn't work. Maybe I missed a step, or maybe something was not working. So whereas on 1604, just used to follow the script and it worked great. 1804, we didn't need to. Popey explained to me it was actually Debian who took NVENC out of FFmpeg. So coming upstream or downstream. I never know the terminology.
Ubuntu coming downstream to Ubuntu,
But also another big shout out to Alan, because if you're having problems with the latest OBS, he has created a special OBS that sticks with version 21.1, and that's the -- candidate version. And that now causes me no glitches on my streaming or English Bob streaming. So if you're using Euro Trucks, go for the candidate version of Snap. It works brilliantly. And he just happened to notice that in a stream and did it. What a fantastic community we live in.
That's very true. I think that's like one of the best things about it, the community, is that we're so helpful to each other that it makes it like the experience just that much better. And I think that Zeb has given some great points about this latest release and really good reasons to use AMD.
There you go. Every one of them. I do want to mention too in this is you come across issues and bugs, open a bug report on it, because Alan, I remember there were a couple of individuals when maybe it was on Big Daddy's show or some others where they were mentioning glitches they were coming up with. And he asked, well, did you open a bug report? Because we're about to release next week and they hadn't got around to it. So that obviously hinders them from getting this stuff worked out on all the various hardware out there if individuals don't. So don't assume is where I'm getting at that there is a bug report open on it or that they are aware of it. Go out there. If you're having an issue, open the bug report and just let them know what type of issue you're having, what you're doing to experience it, what your experience was before, and they should be able to help out there. But also want to mention Ubuntu Mate, Kubuntu getting some updates, Xubuntu, Ubuntu Studio as well. Michael, I'm sure you are zoned in on the Kubuntu piece of this, so anything spectacular there for you?
Naturally, and yes, I think it's really great that they're updating all the different packages for Ubuntu's, like the KDE applications are being updated. But one of the really cool things is that they have the newer version of the Plasma 5, which is 5.15, which is the current version that you can get access to it right now. Another cool thing is that in the future, in June-ish, 5.16 is coming out, and that will be available in this release also with a backport update, so with the PPA backports. So that's worth noting, because a lot of people think that Kubuntu doesn't get updates to the Plasma, and that's just the LTS doesn't get the updates. But if you keep up with the Kubuntu releases, you get the Plasma updates as well. So that's another thing I want to talk about. But I think that the improvements to Xubuntu are interesting, because Xubuntu is known as not really doing a lot in their different releases, because XFCE is known for being like the stable DE that doesn't change that much. So Xubuntu doesn't need to change that much. And that's true in this case as well, but they did do a lot of some cool things that I thought was interesting, because they added a new feature in Thunar, which allows you to hit a shortcut, which is F4, I believe, because it's similar to other other file managers, that will allow you to automatically open a terminal in the location that you are in for Thunar. So if you're already in, if you go to a script in a folder that has a script, you want to launch that script, you can just hit F4, open a terminal, it's already there, so you can just auto-complete the name of the file and that kind of thing. It's really cool that they did that, and they also made it easier to use the catfish search thing as well. So like the work that you can get for the work that's being done on Ubuntu Budgie and Xubuntu are kind of like similar, benefiting each other with the catfish approach. So I think it's kind of cool that they're both promoting catfish, because catfish is a really cool application that makes it a lot easier to do searching depending on what you already have. But I think the kind of the jewel of this release, there's a lot of cool stuff that's in every one of them, but I'm super excited about the Ubuntu Studio release, because of they have some cool stuff. They have like new theming, they have new extra apps and some new tools that you can add during the installer if you want to have some extra benefits instead of just the defaults. But by far the thing that I'm most interested is the Ubuntu Studio package PPA that allows you to install the Ubuntu Studio packaging to other Ubuntu flavors. So you can have, if you want to use Kubuntu and still have Ubuntu Studio features, you can install those on top of Kubuntu now, and that is awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, I think Eric mentioned that on the show when he was last here, that they were trying to get that out ready for 1904.
Yes, and now it's officially released that it is going to be ready, or is ready, and people can use it right now. So I am looking forward to trying that out, because I'm just curious how well it works with the different flavors. So we will see, and I'm totally excited about that. So yeah, Ubuntu 1904.
Cool. And what's also good about this is that let's not forget, off the back of Giants, we will now get a plethora of updates from all of those other Ubuntu-based distributions that want to bring these new features into their operating systems.
Well, provided they're not LTS-based.
Unless they're LTS based, no, of course. But then you can still cherry pick, if you wish, some of the other bits and pieces, I'm sure, and bring it through. So good times for Linux ahead.
Absolutely.
So also up in the news is Fedora 30 beta is out. So if you're wanting to try the latest version of Fedora and you understand what beta means, that it will have bugs and you're supposed to report those and don't put it on a system that you need stability with, definitely go check out Fedora 30. Fedora for me is the distro of choice if I want to see GNOME. I love Fedora's implementation of GNOME. It's just my absolute favorite, and it's the one time where I will stay in a GNOME desktop and be completely happy. So definitely worth checking out. They have some new things in here. They're going to be on the 5.0 kernel as well. So that will be great for all the hardware enablement that will provide. They are also have two new options for desktop environments. So if you want to try the Deepin desktop environment or the Pantheon desktop, that is going to join right next to the other offerings they've had for GNOME, KDE Plasma, XFCE, as well as the other options in the custom Fedora experience that are out there. You have the DNF repository improvements as well for Fedora 30. You have GNOME 3.32. It includes updates to their popular packages as well. So if you are into bug testing and exploring some new things and reporting it, or you just love Fedora, go check out their beta that's available. What are your thoughts, Zeb or Michael, on Fedora 30?
I'm excited to try out the Pantheon and Deepin stuff just because I want to see how they implemented it. Because I think Deepin's a really cool DE, but I think it has some clunkiness. So I'm kind of curious what they did to make some adjustments to that to see if they polished it up a little bit or not. And I think Pantheon is, everybody who's ever heard of Pantheon or the elementary has checked that out at least a little bit. So I'm interested to see what they did with that, because I think Pantheon is a really cool DE, but it's a little bit too limited in the sense of how it's presented by elementary. So I wanted to see what Fedora does with this. So this is going to be really cool. And I'm looking forward to trying out those two different things for Fedora, because Fedora does a lot of interesting things in general, but adding new DEs is something they haven't done in a while. So I am excited to try that out.
Yep. And isn't this the Fedora now, Fedora 30, where they've done all the retooling in the background on how they put it all together and bring it all in and mesh it, or is that not complete yet?
Sort of. They decided to keep doing the same. They decided not to put Fedora 30 on the back burner for a while, to continue to do kind of do them at the same time, parallel, to do the retooling and everything, and also work on Fedora 30. So I don't know how much. I know they did use some retooling. I'm not sure how much. Is involved in this one. I think Fedora 31 might be the one that has the most of the new usage, but there is some of it that's in there. I think it's going to be cool because I'm pretty sure 31 is the one that's going to get rid of Yum. So that's going to be interesting when that happens, because, Yum needs to go away because DNF is much better. But legacy scripts and stuff, I'm not sure how that would work out. But overall, I do think that Fedora is going to be this is going to be an interesting release for sure.
I was playing with Fedora Silverblue and Yum gone, and the only option there is, of course, Flatpak RPM, and so they've taken, and DNF is out as well in Fedora Silverblue, so you don't have that option. You may be able to manually add it, but it's not there by default. But it was interesting to see DNF repository improvements that they have here. Specifically, what they're doing is DNF repository metadata for Fedora 30 beta is compressed with zchunk format in addition to XZ or gzip. Zchunk is a new compression format designed to allow for highly efficient deltas. So what this is doing, as I understand it, is instead of when you're downloading a package, bringing in the entire package, if there's an update, you're just bringing in the changes that are there for that package, and it's making that, which has got to make it highly more efficient.
Yes. They haven't said it any kind of testing as far as benchmarking how much is improved. But what they're doing is called transactional updates, where you are just getting the new differences and keeping the existing thing. And it also they're doing it also on the metadata side. So the metadata side makes it faster to update the repositories and the mirrors and everything and get your checking. So it doesn't take as long to update your system or even to check to see if there's anything to update. So it makes everything much more efficient and smoother.
Very cool
Nice.
changes in Fedora.
Yep.
Yeah. Looks promising. Okay, so along with this new Fedora 30 beta, we've got Flatpak 1.3.2 released. Now, I know there's a lot of controversy still around with all of these universal package managements, but with every release that comes out, there are just substantial improvements. So this release contains a substantial change to how Flatpak does system-wide installations as a user. Previously, Flatpak will pull files into temporary user-owned directory, and the Flatpak system helper would import the files. The new setup uses a new custom fuse file system which the user writes to. And then when this is done, they can invoke access to this from the user, meaning that the file can be directly imported into the system repository without needing to make a copy. So it looks like that they're incorporating some of the tooling that they're going to be doing with Fedora, and they're using the same ideas to make Flatpaks much more efficient. So this is obviously going to reduce your I/O usage. And whilst it is good for the end user, it will make packaging Flatpaks a little more difficult, as the Flatpak is now required to have a user. But hey, the guys making Flatpaks are clever anyway. It's not like they're us poor end users. The only thing that I really wish they would do with Flatpaks is make the installation process for the end user a little bit easier, because you still have to do this weird Flatpak install and then go off and give a URL name. Instead of just going Flatpak install OBS Studio or whatever name you want, you have to actually tell it the repository or how it works, of what you're going to do. So if they could improve that, I think it would be great.
Yeah, the problem is that their structure is to not have a centralized repository. They have the multiple different remote system, which people have been against snaps because of the central repository approach. But at the same time, that's why snaps are more simple, because they have that default central repository. And Flatpaks realized that not having one was a bad idea, so that's why they created FlatHub. But because that's the intent was to not have one, they still have that weird URL system. And I totally agree. If you don't know the URL, it's impossible to guess what it is. So you have to go to the FlatHub and find it out anyway, and they'll give you like a little script to copy and paste. And if you don't have Flatpak support in your GNOME software, you have to do it through the terminal. And you have to copy and paste, because there's no way you're going to guess what it is. But overall, I do think that this is an improvement for the efficiency of it, and also you don't have to spend so much. It doesn't have to take as long to run the installer, and it also makes the installer more efficient and not have to use your system as much, which is great. But at the same time, there are some issues with the way they did it, because of the fact that they need it conflicts with SE Linux a little, and it requires you to have a special SE Linux module for their version to make the Flatpak work. So it's it's like not the system helper. I don't remember what it's called. Maybe it is the Flatpak system helper. That's the one that gives you the access to the new SE Linux compatibility. So you have to have that installed, and you have to have the user set up. So I'm not really sure how much this is going to affect existing installs, but you'll have to, when you upgrade the new Flatpak, it's going to have to add a new user, a Flatpak user, to the system. So there could be some conflicts depending on what distro you use or however they set it up. But overall, I mean, it's a good improvement, because it is something that Flatpak's needed, because there has always been a little bit of a heaviness to the Flatpak installation process, and it's really nice to see that they're working on fixing that.
Well, that was my worry when I was reading this, is the reliability issues that this could cause with people not updating their code correctly when they're package maintaining. Because while you're correct, Zeb, that a lot of the work that these developers do are from experienced individuals, there are a lot of people too who just go out there, they kind of learn how to package it, and they do it and maintain it as a community project. So I would imagine that could create situations where they don't know how to properly implement some of these changes, and the packages could break, which is kind of a fear I have. Because to me, I love snaps and Flatpaks. If I can't find it on Snap, I'll check Flatpak next and see if it's available there. I like that we have the options, but I agree with everything both of you said regarding making Flatpaks easier to utilize. I think it's way too difficult. And I know somebody's just going to comment and be like, what do you mean it's difficult? You put the term in, you put the URL. It's too cumbersome after you've used something like a Snap or even apt for that matter.
Yeah, or literally anything else, even DNF or whatever.
It's all easier than using Flat. Yeah. So I think that there needs to be some work done there. And I understand that's how they implemented in the Flat Hub is a website you go to search for a package, and then it gives you that URL. And I thought when I've used it last time, there was a way you could download from it.
Yeah, you can download the ref file, but all that does is just an installer thing that pulls from wherever the remote is anyway. So the command that you get from the site is just an access to a third party or a hosted ref file. So you could download that ref file and do the exact same thing with that file. But at the same time, you'd need you need a program to support that file or run it through your terminal either way. So I might as well just copy and paste the thing. But it is kind of a weird situation where they wanted to do it where there was no central repository. And I think a universal format is a requirement to have a central repository, because otherwise, where are you going to find this stuff? So it's great that FlatHub is now existing. I just think that there should be more. They should embrace the FlatHub more so, and at least make it a default so you don't have to do all that stuff.
Yeah.
Because as you said, trying to guess the URL is impossible, because I think the Zoom one is like Zoom_Zoom US. So why have they got Zoom in twice?
Because you have to say it's the package name and then the URL for the domain that it is. And if sometimes when you'll see it's like the name of the thing, then FlatHub, or you'll see like and because they can do their own remotes, they have their own custom locations a lot of the time. So even if you do go to the FlatHub, the link might not even be the FlatHub. So there's that. I think if they can make a thing where it automatically detects.
One of our patrons is saying, Flatpak, search Kden Live, and that's going to pull it up and then give you the application location, which makes no sense to somebody who's not used this before, but you would use then the application location to then do Flatpak install FlatHub, then the application level. And I get that isn't really that complicated, but it's far more complicated than any of the other options out there. I don't have to pull from some special application field to get the URL of a site. When I'm using something like Snap, I would just say Snap install Kden Live as an example.
Yeah, and the easier thing would to be when you install from Snap, you can actually just go to the thing and it will give you an option to copy the terminal app or terminal command. And also, whenever you change the branch, it will give you a new terminal command. They tell you exactly what you want. So it makes it the easiest possible way to do it, even if you don't have a software center that supports it. So it makes it a lot easier to do. And I actually prefer to do the terminal way anyway, so it doesn't matter. But they make it a lot easier, whereas the FlatHub, they still need some work. So when you click the install button on FlatHub, it just forces you to download the ref file. And whereas Snap, when you click the install button, it goes, do you want to download the thing? Do you want to open the software store? Or do you want to use this copy and paste the command? It's like there's just some better polish that Snap has done that Flatpak could learn from. And that's all we're saying. Like, Flatpak is great, and I'm really glad it exists. Flatpak. Exactly. And I love that it exists. And I absolutely love that all three of the universal formats do not conflict with each other, so you can use whatever you want. That is awesome. It's just Flatpak, so you could use a little bit of polish, is all we're saying.
I like what Jacob said in our chat. A shell script could easily be written to search and pipe the name URL into the installer. In fact, that's the whole time what I was thinking is, they could fix it with a simple menu script, much like I utilized, although you probably wouldn't want to use my junk code, but much like I utilized for my install script, where it could just pull up a menu of all the options, you check it, and it goes and pulls from the multiple repositories. When you type in a command like install Kden Live, it will go out there and do the work on the back end to pull it all in. So there are ways they could even simplify it further, and I'm sure they're having these exact same conversations over there right now in that team, because you can see all the improvements they've made in just this version here. So it will probably happen in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point too. So we got some great news from companies when they introduce open source to their business model or they embrace the open source model. It's always great to see that. But there's another news this week that there's a great tool that's been around for quite a long time and has a lot of popularity and a lot of market share, and that is Chef. And Chef is a configuration tool and management tool for your deploying of big servers and virtualization servers and managing everything. It's a really cool piece of software, and definitely the best part is the fact that they're embracing open source. They've been using open source here and there for a while, but now they're going 100% open source. And the announcement from the CEO, Barry Christ, said, "We aren't making this change lightly. Over the years, we've had experimented with and learned from a variety of different open source, community, and commercial models in search of the right balance. We believe that this change and the way we made it best aligns the objectives of our communities and our own business objectives. This means that all the software that we produce will be created in the public repos. It also means that we will open up more of our product development process to the public, including roadmaps, triage, and all other aspects of product design and planning process. This is fantastic."
Absolutely. I one of the things here is that this also integrates with all the cloud-based platforms out there. So you've got the Amazon, Google Cloud, Oracle, OpenStack, Microsoft Azure, Rackspace. So it has that full integration. And these are tools that when somebody gets used to, there are other tools out there that do similar things to this. But once you get used to a certain tool, you want to use it no matter what platform that you're on. And you also want to support the open source values that you have, especially if you're in Linux and that's something important to you. So I love that they've made this decision to go fully open source. But there's also some other news in there that Blue Cherry, that I wanted to mention, even though it's a different company, is a video surveillance software that one of our Telegram members mentioned in our Telegram group also went 100% fully open source this week as well. So that's two big, awesome platforms out there that are open source. And for those that don't know, Blue Cherry is video surveillance that lets you add ONVIF supported network cameras automatically with their network scan and detection tool.
Nice.
So now it seems like every week we're getting more and more of these types of announcements. There are a couple where people have gone the other direction, but it seems to be more so folks going this direction, and a lot of administrative based tools. And I have to think a lot of that has to do with the fact that Linux owns the cloud.
Oh yeah, more than likely. I mean, it owns at least 80% or more of the cloud. So more than likely it is a situation where even like Azure is mostly Linux based. So this is really cool. There is a something thing that I'm pretty sure Chef talked about with their new enterprise automation stack. While it's free to use for personal use and it's free for non-commercial use, there is a restriction for commercial usage, which totally makes sense. If you're going to make money off of it, you might as well. I mean, it makes sense that they would have a license where you have to pay for it in order to make money. But some people would look at that as not being truly open because the binaries are not provided to the community unless you have the private usage or the non-commercial usage. But I would disagree, mainly because as long as the source code is open, it is open source. So there's no requirement to provide binaries for anything, and you could still be open source. Like for example, for a long time, RedHat was using that model of the source is completely open, but we're not going to compile everything for you and give you a system. And that's why CentOS was created, is because they took the source code and made their own version. So this model is totally understandable, and I think this is one of the better ways to do a commercial model for open source, because if you want them to do the work for you and you want to make money from their work, then a license fee makes sense.
Yep. What I like about articles like this as well is I know we concentrate on the desktop, but this really brings back to home that there are multi-million-dollar corporations out there working on Linux, because Linux is everywhere.
There you go.
Exactly.
Love it. One thing, too, that we forgot to mention why this is important, even though we do focus heavily on the desktop on this channel, everyone has the opportunity when a platform like this comes out to go and learn server automation, implementation, and things like that because it's free and open source. So it closes the digital divide out there that would keep someone from maybe who doesn't have a ton of money from taking a $2,000 class and then paying another $1,000 for a license because they want to become a server administrator out there or learn how to deploy servers utilizing automation stacks. By open sourcing this now, everybody has the equal opportunity to at least go out there, download this, play with it on their own, learn how it works, and then that gives them some skills that they can get into that possibly they could leverage against work or just new skills that they want to learn, period. And that's one of the things when I see stuff like this that just makes me really happy to see.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's a fantastic point, actually, because the part where I was talking about the binary stuff, that is available for people who are just wanting to learn the infrastructure and how it works. So if that's the type of person you are and you want to learn it, that making that digital divide smaller and smaller is one of the best things about open source. So it's always fantastic to see when that happens.
Yep.
So we've got some more good news coming out. Deadbeef has a new release. Now, it never ceases to amaze me how Linux people name their products.
At least it's not yet another Deadbeef.
That's true. That's true. But Deadbeef is something that I learned when I came to Linux. I don't know which one came first, but it was a tool that I used to use, a player that I used to use a lot on Windows. So when I found out that they had the Linux equivalent under Deadbeef, and then when I tried it out, found out it was actually better than the Windows version, then that was great. But it's been 3 years since there has been an update to this tool. So it's been a welcome sight for the fans. So for those who aren't aware, Deadbeef is a modular audio player that lets you play a variety of audio formats, convert between them, and has support for plugins. Some of the highlights of this release include Opus support, replay gain scanner, improved MP4 tag reading and writing, load embedded album art from MP4 files, and file copy and file move converter applets. For me, one of the things I like most about this is you can just download the app, load it up, use it, run it, it plays, it works, it's great, it's really lightweight. If you want to, you can really overcomplicate it, put loads of different bits and pieces and plugins and make it as feature rich as something like what's that Clementine. You can start off with just a simple player or make it as complicated as you want. So this is one of the things that gets installed on any Linux system that I download because it's so simple.
Nice. And I love the idea that they named it something a little bit silly because it's easier to remember Deadbeef than that stupid named audio player that's actually great that Michael uses. That
it's not stupid, it's great.
Like
okay,
17 times before I was understanding what the actual what it was.
It's actually fair because it's like
it's just YMMZK5213-0R2D2.
Close. It also has C3PO in there, but so close. But it's a great media player. I like Deadbeef. I used to use it all the time, and I think it's great that they're bringing it back. But I prefer Qt applications. Naturally, and QMMP is the name of the player that he's referring to. And to be fair, it makes sense why it's named that because it's the Qt multimedia player. But also, that's not a very descriptive name as far as like remembering it. Yeah, you could just call it like spell the word cute out instead of just doing the letters. It'd be Qt music player, or Qt music, or something. I don't know, whatever. It could be that. It could be anything. And I agree that QMMP, sometimes I'll even say it wrong, and I've been using it for a couple of years.
Chris was doing the same thing. You were telling me the name, and then you had to go take a call or something, and I said, what did he say it was? And Chris was like, QNNP. And I was like, QNNP. So I'm doing searches and stuff, and he's like, QPMM. And then we're trying all these variations. It is just stupid. So I love Deadbeef because you know what? I'll never forget that. It's Deadbeef. That's my
It's a great name. I'll give you that.
Yeah, QMMP is easier to remember than that other Guadalupe thing or whatever it's
Guayadec.
There you go.
Guayadec. It's the name of a music player that's named after a mountain that's in South America.
Nice.
I live in London. What do I know about South America?
I have no idea. The only reason I know it exists because they made the music player called that, and I was like, wow, how do you say this?
When you did that, Michael, I pictured in my head, the more you know, rainbow coming down. And
I was so curious about how to say the name of the application. I was like, so how do I find it? They didn't give me any information, so I was like, okay, I just go on this tangent for a while until I finally figured it out. I was like, oh, it's a mountain name. Okay, cool. Anyway, Deadbeef is a really cool application for music players if you're want to check out one. Especially, it has a very unique and interesting name too.
Yep. So KDE Applications 19.04 got released. I imagine every time something like this happens, Michael buys himself a cake, maybe invites some virtual friends over online because
KAKE.
and has a party at his house. Because you love KDE. There's no doubt about there. But this has some amazing things for you to celebrate, for all of us to celebrate, actually, out there. So there are updates to pretty much everything to a degree.
Yep, basically everything.
Amongst the applications, you've got the KDE File Manager Dolphin can now preview more file types. This is something that annoys me beyond belief when you have files in there and the different types of pictures or whatever it might be, and it doesn't show an actual preview of it or an icon that makes any sense. So I love that they're adding more support for this. This includes Blender, MS Office, and EPUB files there. They have better support for SMB Samba protocol for Windows shares, which is awesome. You have Ocular's KDE Doc Viewer now allows users to verify if PDFs have been digitally signed, along with, and I was watching the video on this and it was awesome, improved touchscreen and presentation mode, which is really useful because most of your laptops are now starting to come with touchscreen in there as well. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to touch the Kdenlive update, Michael, because I feel like the only person on this podcast that deserves to talk about the awesomeness that they have put into Kdenlive is you. So take it away, sir.
Okay, so Kdenlive, as some people might be aware that I'm a fanboy of, I love this application. It's a great video editor. And this newest version is a complete refactoring of the timeline. They've basically rewritten about 60% of the application, and the timeline works in a lot of cool new ways. So first of all, they now split the audio and video tracks automatically. So when you drop a clip onto the timeline, it will it has 3 audio and 3 video tracks by default, and whatever one you put it on, it will make the audio to like the corresponding thing, and the video and the audio clips are connected to each other when you move stuff around. And they also did some cool stuff with the keyboard navigation. It allows you to move around clips and around the timeline a lot faster and a lot more seamless because they've added a bunch of new techniques to do it. I don't know all of them right now because I haven't had a chance to try every single thing, but I'm looking forward to learning all those because I currently have a ridiculous amount of usage for the keyboard navigation, and a couple I had to create my own with the macro keyboard thing. And so I'm super excited about that. And they made a new voiceover feature for the in-track audio recording, so you can record the audio while you're watching the playback for the screen capture or things like that. Very nice. They've also made some new improvements. There was this one thing that kind of bothered me for a little while, where if you have a project in Kdenlive and you wanted to copy an effect from one project to another, you can't really do that. But now, with the new version of 1904, you can, which is great. Because a lot of the times I have something that's already in a previous project that I want to reuse, and there was techniques already to do that, but this way is a lot cleaner, a lot more user friendly, and more intuitive because it's just copy the effect, paste it on the other project, done.
Nice.
Awesome. They also made some new improvements to the external Blackmagic displays. And they improved the way they handle the keyframes of the system, so it's better. Also, like the frame rate stuff has been improved, so like it detects better when you install a new clip. Let's say you have your project for a particular frame rate or frames per second, and you install you put in a new clip that's not to what that project is set. it will automatically detect that and go, would you like to change it to this one that's based on this clip, making it a lot easier and seamless to get to the editing part. As you can tell, I'm a pretty big fan of KDE Live and KDE in general too. But I am so excited about this. And another cool thing is the KDE Live people are great developers, and also the community is really nice. I love the fact that they're so attentive to the users as well, because I sent it this was probably 4 or 5 days ago, just right before the release. Or they're already in the time point where they're getting ready to do feature freeze, and they're in it. It's really close. And I was like, hey, what'd be really cool is if you had this feature, and it was having color coded guides and stuff. And they were like, hey, that's a really good idea. We actually already built that in, but we haven't activated it yet. So we'll go ahead and finish that and put it in the next release. And now it's there in the 1904 version. Awesome. Anyway.
But what's with them announcing it's out, but it not being out?
Okay. So we're going to talk about that. Okay. So here's the thing about this. This is kind of on the fault of KDE. Not necessarily on the fault of KDE Live.
I can't believe somebody captured this moment in history, because Michael has never laid fault ever on KDE.
That's not true. KDE does single click by default. That's bad. So they've done some weird things before in the past, but this one is a very interesting, weird decision, and that is KDE decided to release all the new KDE applications on the exact same day that Ubuntu released 1904. Why would you do that? The KDE Live people thought, it's not a good idea to release our stuff in its release notes and everything on the same day. We're just going to wait a couple days and release a lot of stuff then. But the KDE people thought, well, we're going to go ahead and say the KDE Live stuff is ready, even though it's not. I mean, technically it is. You can use it with the app images, but it's not available on their downloads page because they don't think that they should do that, because they're right, you shouldn't do that. That's a weird decision, but KDE thought we should.
Do you see all this double talk here, Zeb? He's just going around and around, and it's like a lawyer trying.
No, I'm not. I'm totally admitting that it was a terrible,
in front of the judge off the hook.
No, it's a bad decision. Okay,
We'll get the bill at the end of the show, yeah.
The week before, there was not a lot of news that was released because people were getting ready for the Ubuntu stuff, and they didn't want to compete with that. Mm-hmm. And also the same thing happens with the same week of Ubuntu. There's not a ton of news because you don't want to compete with Ubuntu because you're not going to beat Ubuntu's popularity as market share. So when they release something new, they're going to dominate the news cycle. But apparently KDE doesn't agree with that and decided to do it anyway, which created this weird confusion.
We're covering both stories, so I think that it's getting
but that's because we're dedicated to the community and we're passionate about the ecosystem.
Oh, nice.
So,
you know what? Joe in our chat says you should be a politician, and I'm starting to agree with him. I could almost see you spinning anything, man. I think you've missed your calling. Senator Michael Tunnell.
I love KDE. But at the same time, this was a bad decision. So
there we go.
They fixed that. So next time, don't release on the same. I could understand maybe not getting the same week, but the exact same day within an hour. Come on, think about it.
Well, there are tons of the. There's nothing that anybody could say arguing how talented the team is that works on KDE applications, even if their timing isn't perfect.
I agree.
And all of the work that they've done here is incredible. The work with even Gwenview, which we didn't even touch on, or the console or Kmail. There's so much.
You're right. Let's talk about Gwenview. Gwenview is great.
Stop it, Michael.
Okay, sorry.
All this stuff is fantastic. You can go read about it in the release notes, but honestly, there is too much to even cover with
too much. Challenge accepted.
At the end of the show, we'll just let Michael go wild and talk about it.
I'm just confused here. Why isn't it Gwenview?
Because I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know why they named it Gwenview. It's I have no idea why it's named that, but it's a great application. You should use it.
We want to move on. Don't poke the bear.
Speaking of poking bears, RedHat has decided to poke 950 IT leaders to find out what they think about open source and its the ways that it does a strategic approach and importance to how they do their work in their field. So they published an article and surveyed these people about the importance of open source. They talked to the 950 IT leaders, whether they thought, the first question they asked was, what do they think about the open source, how it was a strategic importance to them. And the strategic importance part, actually is the most important part, And it's talk about the way they do their enterprise infrastructure and all that kind of thing. So like how much do they put into open source as far as like a fundamental piece of their ecosystem. And 69% said that it was very or extremely important. 20% said it was important, and the rest were wrong.
Well done, sir. And you're absolutely right. There were some other interesting statistics that they had there. They found 42% of IT leaders are using open source for digital transformation efforts. So what we're talking about here is really not just modernization of an aging infrastructure, which is 53%, but when you talk about transformation, what you're looking at is really the future of your your company and your network and how it's laid out and the entire infrastructure. So when they're looking at it from a future standpoint, it's not just upgrading now, aging, it's looking at the future of transforming their business as well, which I thought was quite amazing to see. And I love that Red Hat went out there and did this work, because sometimes companies force you to utilize certain standards or platforms, whether it's to save money or because there's some deal on the side with some other company that gets the CEO a bonus by suggesting that you use the software or whatnot. But so you really want to know, do people really enjoy it that are working on it each and every day? Is it something they see as a part of their business that's important to their business, that's important to modernizing and transforming their business? And it looks like overwhelmingly the answer is yes here.
As it should be.
Indeed. So on to some gaming news, and this is very exciting for me. Unity 2019.1 is out. This is a very popular and powerful gaming engine out there. And this release is especially awesome for Linux game developers. So in Unity 2019.1, the Unity editor for Linux has left experimental status and moved into preview mode. This means they are now on the path to have a fully supported Linux version by the end of the year, which was their goal, and they are hitting it perfectly.
Nice.
Excellent.
So why is this important? My brother, for instance, develops a game, and he is moving. You guys may have seen the videos on my channel. He is moving to a Unity platform. To be able to get his game in the current platform engine that he's utilizing is extremely difficult, but having an editor within the game engine itself to not only develop games there, but to port the games is incredibly helpful for game devs to get their game on Linux, which we want to see much, much more of. Also, Unity has created some of the most amazing titles out there. Zeb may not play all of them because some of them are kind of pixelated at times, but they are without a doubt AAA titles that have won incredible amounts of awards, and some of them are not pixelated. I just wanted to throw that joke in there because Zeb's back, and I want to pick on him a little bit. We've got Hollow Knight, Shadowgun Legends, the Elder Scroll Legends, Oxygen not included. That was the pixelated one I was thinking of a little bit, and Pokemon Go. I mean, that was a phenomenon for a while where people were getting hit by buses and everything else walking around with their phones. You had Tyranny and Valley, just to name a few games that were developed in Unity. So this is just the best news out, I think, in a long time for gaming.
We actually were using the game we were running Golf with Friends, and that's based on Unity as well. And that's if you didn't know, we talked about earlier in the podcast. If you don't remember, go check out the stream on Ryan's channel about that, because we played Golf with Friends and that was fun. But the Unity editor is awesome because like you could already make games for Linux with the Unity, but there was a lot of people who didn't test it very well. They just kind of checked the box and did it. And having it available to the Linux as a development platform as well makes it a lot more easier to do the process of like the building and testing and stuff. So you don't have to reboot and test it, and so it makes it a lot better. Yeah. So that is awesome.
And for those interested in game design, it is a ton of fun to go out there and make games. And if it's something that has have been of interest to you, definitely go check this out. But it is the Linux editor specifically is targeting Ubuntu 16.04 and 18.04, as well as CentOS 7 64-bit. They are targeting the GNOME desktop on X11, and it will work with proprietary NVIDIA drivers or the way you should be anyways. AMD Mesa there. So you've got that. Those are the ones they're targeting. That does not mean you couldn't run it on something like Arch, because obviously Arch runs everything, but that's where they're targeting their platform towards.
Yeah, sure.
And just a quick tip for any game developers out there, please don't come back to me and ask to test your game unless you're going to bring it back to the quality of Valley, because that is a truly magnificent game. Even if you don't want to play the game in itself, just wandering around the places that they can take you to and see the depth of the detail that they've gone into, it's just so relaxing just to have a little country stroll without leaving your seat and go around this whole Vista world. It's an amazing game. I love it.
Yep. Absolutely.
And just to surprise Ryan, talking of another game that I'm looking forward to coming out, because I used to love Doom back in the day.
What's going on now?
Sigil. How are you going to pronounce this? Sigil.
Just go with it.
No idea.
Okay.
So yeah, whatever you want.
Yeah. So there's a new first-person shooter that's coming out, and if you have a fondness for Doom, we have some great news for you on the horizon. There is a new megawad Sigil. A megawad is a wad made up of other wads, and a wad is a default file format for Doom.
This is true.
So the original creator or co-founder of ID Software, John Romero, who also worked on titles like Wolfenstein and Doom. So what you're going to get out of the box is 9 single-player and 9 deathmatch levels. The free megawad scheduled to be released in the first of this year, but has some delays and is now due out sometime in May. A Sigil is the spiritual successor to the 4th episode of Doom and picks up where the original left off. So this is just, it goes into a lot of other bits of technical things here, and they're going to bring out a collector's box if you're a fanboy type thing.
I almost bought it.
But what I love about this is, yes, it's old school and yes, it's pixelated, but that's what makes it so good. It just brings back just so many memories of playing Doom. Whether or not
the fall has changed Zeb.
I know. Or he was abducted by aliens, and we have an alien version.
I knocked my head when I fell out of the caravan. That's what it was. I'll be back to normal next week, boys. But no, this is just great. And the stupid thing I like about this game is you can put it on what I call "Don't Hurt Me" mode. Basically, you can go around and you can stand 2 foot away from this beast, and it's not going to kill you until you realise, hang on a minute, I've got to get this gun out, or I've got to get this chainsaw out, or I've just got to punch it.
Yeah.
But then you can go the other way and put it on, do your worst, come at me. And then you'll poke your head round the corner, and already 3 of them have shot these fireballs at you.
Yeah.
You can pull your head back. You've just had a quick haircut. So you can set the level that you want, and there's just hours and hours of fun. I think it's going to be great.
Yeah, so this to me was super exciting because, the original Wolfenstein was one of those games that I remember my dad, who was also not a gamer at all, stopped what he was doing. We had the computer shop, and he was like, kids, come around. We've got a game to play here. And it was the first time he sat down to play a game was Wolfenstein, because he just thought it was the coolest thing ever. And then you start looking at Doom and other things. John is a legend, and the fact that he's going to add in these missing levels, finally create add some more chapters to the Doom story is fantastic. Now, this is the original Doom, not the beautiful 2016 AAA graphic version of Doom. He's adding it to the original Doom, and this will work through Linux. It even mentions it on the website, utilizing GZ Doom there. But if you want to pick up a collector's edition, which includes a signature from John Romero there, you can certainly do that. And my favorite part, it also includes a 3.5-inch disc that is also a USB drive that I think will contain the game on it itself. And how awesome is that?
I love that. What do you mean by 3.5 inch? Are you talking about the 3D model of the save icon?
Exactly.
So our spotlight comes from our listener this week. Ellis has said, I know a tool that is a favorite of mine for archiving software for file systems. It works for most file systems that you'd care about, with different caveats when it comes to file systems that have subvolumes and things like that. But the tool is named fsarchiver. and it's been around for at least 10 years or so. And it operates by copying all the files and file attributes to its own archiving format, which is the .fsa. And it has checksums to the files to be able to detect corruption in the archives.
Nice.
This is actually pretty cool because the way that they do it, so you might be kind of like, why would you want another like custom format? But the reason why is because it doesn't image the file system. What it does is it archives the files of the file system into this file, and it makes it possible to move the archive to another disk and in a whole nother file system and extract it onto that file system as long as there's room for the system or for the files on that system. So you're able to do a backup that's kind of a universal backup. So that is a really awesome tip, and thank you very much, Ellis, for doing so.
No, you need to read the PS.
No, I don't.
Ellis writes, P.S. It can be of use for filthy dual booters like Michael since it has support for NTFS as well. I thought that was an important part of this whole
It is
thing.
important for people who use NTFS. I do not, therefore I didn't decide it was useful for me to say that part.
Thank you so much for sending us in a software spotlight there. We really appreciate it. All right, so on to tips and tricks. Use LVFS and FWP UPD daemon to update your computer's firmware if it's not supported. So the reason why I wanted to give this tip and trick out there is because there were some comments that were made. It was either in the Telegram group talking about trying to do firmware updates, but it's hard to do in Linux, etc. So I wanted to talk about this because if you go to the LVFS website, you can check if your hardware manufacturer has joined into this partnership. And now there is Dell, HP, Lenovo, Intel. They're all a part of this along with many others. And LVFS stands for Linux Vendor Firmware Service. You can manually download and install the updates or search LVFS manually if you want. Additionally, Discover and GNOME software have support for it built into them. Mm-hmm. So you can install FWP UPD, start the service, and run the commands to refresh and then update. And it will look for any updates that need to be flashed onto your hardware and go through the process of installing it for you, which means you don't have to be a filthy dual booter and boot into Windows to do the firmware update.
You also don't have to go into your BIOS to do it either, and that's what's one of the biggest benefits to it, because like having the firmware into the software manager and all that stuff, really cool.
So a big thank you to each and every one of you for supporting us by watching or listening, however you do it. We love our patrons and our coffee supporters. Just want to give a special shout out to all of you for giving us the incredible support you have. We do a live show for our patrons, so come join us. As Noah says, it's the worst show ever, but you can get it for just $1.
I don't think he says the worst version of the show, so it's a great show.
Oh, I thought it was the worst show ever, but it just is. And our patrons are asking, you guys do a live show? Yeah, this isn't the recorded version you're watching, believe it or not.
Yep. So that's right. We do. We have a Coffee as well as Patreon. So what benefits is whether you use Coffee or Patreon, you get the same benefits, the same perks and everything. Which regardless of when you would get updates to when we're doing the show live, which we are currently doing, and when we do any kind of like release for new videos and things like that. So be sure to whichever one you want is fine, but be sure to get that so you can join us live and be a part of the show, and to be a part of the post show we also do at the end of every live recording, which we do live recordings if we didn't clarify that. And also be sure that being not to confuse Patreon with Coffee and patrons, but they're still patrons.
No, you're not doing this when Noah's out. You can't do this when Noah's not around.
I can because he can't defend it. So patron is okay to be used on everything because the word is not exclusive to Patreon. So I just use the term patron to everything.
Well, I happen to agree with Michael, because whether you pay by Ko-fi or you pay by Patreon,
this is twice in a week you've agreed.
You are a patron of the Destination Linux Show. It's a totally separate word. So, yep.
Oh my gosh.
2 on the top, 1 on the bottom. Next. Okay, so please get back to us and let us know what you think. Let us know whether or not, if you're a Ko-fi supporter, you think you're a patron. Let's get
exactly.
Let's not forget, you've got to guess where Noah is. And no, he's not lying down having a little headache or a tantrum because we've mentioned patrons and Ko-fi in the same word. He's doing something, so you've got to tell us what he's up to. So get back to us and let us know. You can send your email to comments@destinationlinux.org, or you can write to us in our Telegram group. You can speak to us on Discord, Twitter, Mastodon, and loads of other ways that Michael has put together for you on destinationlinux.org/contact. So please keep your comments and suggestions coming. We love to read them out, and they do give us a laugh, even if we can't get them out on the show.
Absolutely. And also, the fun doesn't just stop here. We also have our own channels you can check out. So you can check out Zeb's channel for youtube.com/ZebedeeBoss, where he does some streaming for Euro Truck Simulator, destroying caravans, not falling out of them. And you can check out Ryan. His channel is youtube.com/DOSGeek, where he covers hardware tests, benchmarking, all kinds of interesting things about also like gaming tests and everything. So check out his content as well. You can check out mine at tuxdigital.com, where you can find the This Week in Linux podcast.
You can watch it live while you're recording it a lot of times on the weekend, so look out for that.
That's true. I also do record it live on the weekends most of the time, except for the past 3 times. But this next time is going to be live.
There you go.
Yeah, just say
you heard it here
click that
first.
bell for notifications.
Right. Click.
Only
So,
this one comes out after his one, so hey, confusing or what?
Yeah. Okay. Any time warp stuff is. So you can also check out Noah at the AskNoahShow.com, where you can check. He does his podcast and also radio show where people can call in and ask him questions about business, tech, and Linux and that kind of thing. Anyway,
You know what I did the other day, Michael?
What's that?
I forgot it was Tuesday because that's how my week was going. And so I had this tech question. It was something about my server or whatever. And it was literally like 10 minutes before he starts the show. And I'm on Telegram. Hey, how do you fix this thing? And he just answered it. But then my alarm went off on my phone saying the Ask Noah show's starting. And I'm like, he's probably like, why is this moron not just called on my show so everyone could learn from it? It's because I forgot it was Tuesday.
Yeah, that happens. I've done that probably like an hour before his show started. I've sent him messages. And then I started, and every once in a while, I'll send him a message at the end of his show, and then ask him a question or something, and say, "Hey, I waited till the end of the show. You're welcome."
There you go.
So anyway, be sure also to like that smash button and share the show on social media.
Everybody have a great week, and remember that the journey to self is the destination.
Nice.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.